Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 445, and today's date is August 19th, 2014, and the title of this episode is U.S. Preparing to Bomb Syria, FAA Shuts Down Airspace to American Airplanes. Now, we understand in Iraq on August 8th, the FAA shut down the airspace to American airliners, and we realize that the United States went in there and bombed Iraq. Of course, they made it look like they were giving humanitarian aid to the Yazidis, but really what they were doing was protecting the oil interests there from the tribes that are rising up in Iraq. And the second thing they wanted in Iraq was to remove Maliki, and eventually that did occur. Now what we're seeing is the Syrian opposition, the Syrian Free Army, the army that the United States has given them anti-aircraft weapons, anti-tank weapons, to fight Assad. They have just closed the airspace in Syria to American airliners. Now, we can see that they are going to start ramping up the propaganda that the United States needs to go into this area. We also understand some unidentified plane bombed different locations in Tripoli, hitting different tribes, and some people are picking up the bomb fragments, and they're American made. So it looks like it's either the United States or maybe Israel or some other country, Egypt or some other country, came in, Saudi Arabia, could be anyone, came in, bombed Tripoli. So all of this is starting to really ramp up, and we understand that the Islamic State, their mission is to maneuver themselves into the Middle East and bring themselves into Africa, and their main goal is to get into Syria, and we understand that talks in Iran are completely falling apart. I mean, we have Iran leaders out there saying that America is just bullying them to do different things that were not on the original P5+1 deal, and they don't think this is going to go through. And I've always said, this whole nuclear talk, this is a mirage. It's an illusion. The real goal is to infiltrate their banking system, get their natural resources, and put it all on the U.S. dollar. Now, if they can't do that, they will try to get into Syria and Iran, and we can see that this whole plan will eventually fall apart, because who is backing these countries? Russia and China. And of course, Iran and Syria have a lot of oil, a lot of natural gas. They have contracts with Russia and China, and this cannot happen. And we also understand that they're making deals not using the U.S. dollar. So we can see the central bankers are ramping up their plans. We already see that the airspace above Syria is pretty much closed off to American airliners, and we can see right now that they're really pushing the agenda. And of course, they need to do this because they need to prop up the U.S. dollar. In their minds, they do believe if they can get into these countries, capture the natural resources, put it all on the U.S. dollar, all these countries out there would have to keep the dollar in reserves, and pretty much they can keep this going for a longer period of time. But what we're seeing is a lot of countries are looking at the situation and saying, you know what, we do not need to hold the U.S. dollar. We have other currencies that we can use that completely bypass the dollar. We can ramp up our reserves in renminbi, we can use rubles, and we see many of the nations have done this already. And we can see that the events that are occurring now in August, of course Congress is away, is starting to really ramp up. We are in the middle of August right now, and look how much has happened. Let's get into the economic collapse news. Now, we understand that that Europe is completely falling apart. I mean, Spain right now, and we go from country to country inside Europe here, and Spain right now, their trade deficit doubled in the first half as imports soared. Spain is, again, dependent on foreign financing, and they're borrowing quite a bit of money. Spain recorded a trade deficit of 11.882 billion euros in the first half of the year, almost a double year ago now, when this same gap stood at 5.824 billion. According to the Economy Ministry report released Monday, exports slowed their growth after rising just about 0.5% year over year, and imports increased by 5.3%. Spain has a huge amount of debt, and there's about 6 million unemployed Spaniards inside Spain who just are not working right now because there are no jobs. And of course, when you have no jobs, you have no revenue, you can't pay off the debt, and you're not going to be exporting, you'll be importing more than you're exporting, and this is exactly what we're seeing. But we're seeing many, many countries right now doing the same thing. A huge amount of unemployment, youth unemployment down the tubes, and most of these countries are in a huge amount of debt, and this is continuing. It's a domino effect. It is spreading into UK. It's spreading into Germany. We see Australia, their unemployment's ticking up. We see Canada, they're manipulating the unemployment numbers, trying to fix that and come up with something that makes sense. And of course, when you start manipulating all the numbers, nothing actually makes sense. Now, we see that consumer price inflation rose a mere 0.1%, and they're out there saying, see, there is no inflation whatsoever. But what's been happening here is that the biggest drop in all these products is personal computers. That dropped by -6%. But food prices increased by 0.4% month over month. So what we're seeing is they don't count those things like energy, food, the things that you use every day. Other products are dropping and falling, and things that you don't really need, like a computer system or any other type of thing, and those things are falling in price, and people aren't buying them, so the prices are being reduced. But things that people actually need and use, those prices are going up. We're seeing food continually increase, and also they are changing food products. They're making them smaller. They're filling them with other types of additives to make them cheaper. They're replacing tuna with other types of fish, and we can see this is continually going on just to keep the price at the same rate. But as we know, and if you do any type of shopping, you realize, hey, this is not the same product that I normally buy. This is completely different. And what's been happening is a lot of people have been writing in saying, yes, products have been shrinking. They've been substituting a lot of products, and a lot of things like fresh food, like milk, meat, liquor, well, not really fresh, but these things are very difficult to manipulate, and this is why we see these prices on these products really ramping up right now. Now, out on the corporate media, we see that housing permits starts have surged, and they're like, the housing recovery is back, everything is fantastic. But when we take a look at what's really been happening, the surge in housing is really multifamily housing units. Now, these are the type of units that the hedge funds and investment companies are purchasing. They buy them in cash, and they try to rent them out. Now, of course, these are surging. They're building more of these. They're having these hedge fund and investment companies and foreign investors come in and purchase all these in cash. And, of course, then they go to Home Depot and to the home improvement stores and buy all cabinets and flooring and things to really fix them up. But when we look at the single-family home, guess what? Those did not really increase. It was less than 1%. So we can see right now that the cash money is going to these rental units, trying to get people in there, and they're trying to hold on to this real estate market to beef the prices up and to make it look like the real estate market is improving. But what's very interesting, and of course Home Depot came out with their earnings and they said, wow, look at this, the housing recovery is in full swing. No, we knew we were going to see an uptick during this May, June, July type of period. But what's very interesting, during this same time period, mortgage applications have continually declined and housing prices have continually declined, and mortgage companies have been laying off people nonstop, and a lot of mortgage companies are continually closing. So what's out in the corporate media? They are reporting that, oh, these mortgage applications, this is not a sign that the real estate market is declining or anything like that. No, no, no. What's happening is we're seeing a trend of people switching from getting mortgages into paying in cash. Now, I don't know about you, but there's no way that I have $400,000, $300,000, $200,000 on hand to go out and buy a home right now. I don't know how many Americans can just go like, hey, you know what? I got a spare $800,000. You want to go move and buy a house? You want to go from our rental and purchase a house? Hey, how about all those college kids that can't find a job? I got a spare, $250. Let me go buy a house. No, they're making this up, and they're out there trying to convince everyone just because mortgage applications are declining, this doesn't mean the housing market is declining. Well, yeah, it does, because most Americans lost pretty much a lot of their wealth during the 2008, 2009 going forward crash, which never recovered. And what we're seeing is those cash buyers are not the everyday American, the everyday hard-working American. What we're seeing, it's investment companies, hedge funds, foreign investors, and guess what? They can't keep this momentum up, and it will not be able to be, they won't be able to sustain this whatsoever. And as we move out of this summer, we see that mortgage applications are continually declining. And when we move into winter, we're going to see prices start to drop. This is why Fannie Mae was already out there looking and saying, you know what, we're going to revise our expectations of how housing is going to do towards the end of this year and 2015, because they realize this is not recovering at this point. They see the trend right now. Of course, the corporate media, the government, they want you to believe in this recovery of housing, and they're continually pushing this, and they will not stop pushing this until the very, very end. Now, it looks like they're continually trying to hamper, put a lid on free speech. And we see there's new legislation in New York. And basically, what they're saying, anyone who's trying to speak freely about a politician and did not get what they're talking about or their flyers or anything that they're putting out there approved, they could have a fine imposed on them. For an example, let's say a citizen was outraged by a state representative, and there's claims of cutting taxes, and they hand out hundreds of flyers with a photo of the politician and a brief statement about his voting record at a local sporting event. While most would pretty much say, yes, thank God this person's calling this person out, and they're showing that, you know, look what they've done. But with this new law, what they're really saying is that you cannot do this anymore. You need to have this approved. You need your flyer approved, or you could be fined $1,000. And this is coming from the New York State Board of Elections, and there is an emergency regulations relative to independent expenditure reporting adopted by the board in May. And this whole thing is being pushed out there, saying that you cannot say anything unless you get it like a permit or a license and get whatever you're going to hand out approved by this system here. So we can see they're continually putting the lid on free speech. We also see those free speech zones, or those cages, those fenced-in areas, and they're continually doing this because, as we know, they continually want to take away our rights. And I'm talking about the U.S. government, central bankers. They do not want the people to have any type of rights. This is why they're hitting on the Fourth Amendment. This is why they're hitting on the First Amendment. This is why they're hitting on the Second Amendment. They're trying to convince you that you do not have these rights. And a lot of government websites and a lot of books, you're starting to see them change the way the rights are worded, so it looks like you don't have these rights, and they're really privileges, and the government can take them away at any time. Now, there were a lot of videos in Ferguson, right? And we see one from CNN. Now, yesterday I reported that there was another video, and it looked like there was a militiaman from the eastern section of Ukraine just appeared in the video, and we know that was a complete hoax. It was propaganda. And now we see another video in Ferguson where someone is holding up a sign behind the reporter that says ISIS is here. I mean, they are just really pushing this propaganda out there. They're doing, and this one was just looks like it was a sheet that had writing on it that says ISIS is here. They were holding it up behind the reporter. But what I realized is that there was another video of a CNN reporter, and it looks like he gave the police a signal to start pushing the crowd back, and it looks like it was completely staged. They were pushing it back, but the cameramen were not being pushed back. And then after a couple seconds, he gave like another signal, and he started walking forward. And it looked like it was completely staged. It was coming out of CNN. And we're starting to realize that things in Ferguson are not really what they seem. And it seems like there are definitely agent provocateurs in there. It seems like they're actually really trying to stage something. I mean, right now, the U.S. Federal Aviation, the FAA, extended its restrictions on flying below 3,000 feet to August 25th now. And what's happening is a lot of the residents inside Ferguson are starting to say, you know something? We understand there's other people here, but it's very strange in the way they're acting. And they're saying there's a lot of mixed type of and religious groups, insurgents, and they a lot of times turn these peaceful protests into violent riots. For more than a week, the people of Ferguson welcomed the outside activists who flocked to show solidarity after police killed an unarmed teenager. By day 11, some residents were having second thoughts about the people coming into the town. The intensified mayhem of recent nights, apparently initiated by a small organized group of agitators, has raised a question mark over the strangers who join the nightly demonstrations. One of the residents say, listen, if we relax, the police will stay relaxed. Let's have a peaceful protest. And he was calling this out on a megaphone. And for some time it did work. People were calm, relaxed. And then about 500 meters away, down the end of the avenue, in front of the ruins destroyed by the Quick Trip store that has been the focus of a lot of protest, a small group of youths tore up street signs, threw bottles at police. Then at least one of them opened fire and triggering a heavy police response of stun grenades, tear gas, which made the town yet again resemble a war zone. But what's very interesting about this is the residents there are saying that these people who come out at night that cause this, they're wearing masks. They don't pretty much hang around afterwards. They hurl projectiles, they do whatever they can, and then they flee the area. Now, this is very interesting because we saw this in Ukraine where there were masked men doing the same exact thing, using the people there and trying to provoke them into rioting. And it seems like the same thing is happening in Ferguson right now. Now, we can see that the National Guard came into Ferguson, and what's very interesting is yesterday I reported that they lifted the curfew. Now, why would they lift the curfew, which means that people can be out at all times of night to clash with the National Guard? Now, did they want this to happen? Did they want this to escalate? It kind of seems like they did. And we can see that the people there also stormed the governor's office because the National Guard was coming in. But what's very interesting is how the corporate media is playing this up, where they're trying to make it into a race type of thing. No, this is a police militarization type of issue where police use their power to enforce on the people. And it's just not black, it's just not white, it's just not Hispanic. Everyone is involved in this. And we can see that this is what it's all about. And what's very interesting on MSNBC, host Ed Schultz suggested on a show last night that the police, like those currently occupying Ferguson, Missouri, may need military gear in order to deal with a threat posed by anti-government groups. Okay, really? So how did anti-government groups get into this conversation about what was happening in Ferguson? Well, there's a lot of anti-government groups, he said, that have popped up in this country, hate groups that have popped up in this country, and law enforcement feels outgunned and they want to be prepared. So what you're actually saying, and you're getting this feed from the government, you're saying that people who don't agree with the government and that might one day say, you know what, we're making a stand and we want the government out of there, these are the people you have to be worried about, and you're fearful that the police cannot handle the situation because they're not militarized against the people of the United States. So he went on to say that since the police will be outgunned, they need to be prepared. But the question is, where are the police getting this type of information where they're worried about anti-government groups and they're worried about not having enough armament? They're getting it from DHS. They're getting it from the United States government. They have been in compliance with DHS. DHS has been supplying them with fatigues, with machine guns, with tanks, with electronic surveillance. This is how it's being played out right now. And Schultz went on to say that he thinks it's perfectly reasonable for heavy armed police to use armored vehicles and military weapons against some Americans, so long as their political opinions can be skewed as anti-government. So anyone that doesn't agree with the government, he believes that the police can come down hard on those people. Well, forgive me, but we have every right to disagree with the government, to say we don't want this type of government, and we don't agree with what has been going on. And of course, the government doesn't like this, and this is why we're seeing what we're seeing today. They're building up this whole entire thing because you know what's happening. The collapse is coming. They're afraid of these people who know that the government, the central bankers, are to blame for this, and they're afraid for their well-being. And this is why they created DHS. This is why they infiltrated all the local law enforcements. And this is why right now on the corporate media, they have this propaganda being spewed out there to make people say, hey, you're anti-government. I'm telling on you. And this, you can see right now, is starting to build. And this is a conditioning process that's happening in Ferguson right now. Okay, now we understand that Ukraine has the oil and gas pipelines coming through Ukraine, which then goes out through Europe. And we also understand that Biden and Kerry and the United States, the EU, all decided to take control of those pipelines, which will make them billions upon billions of dollars. Now, of course, Russia right now is trying to create two different pipelines that will bypass Ukraine completely, and one of them is South Stream, which is not completed yet. And right now, the pipeline will go through Bulgaria, and it seems like Bulgaria right now is saying, you know, I don't know if we really want the South Stream gas pipeline to go through our country, because Europe right now and the United States is telling us we should not allow you in there, and they are giving us huge, vast amounts of money. They're also giving us 12 F-15 fighters, and right now we might not be working with Russia to have the pipeline go through the Black Sea, around Ukraine, through Bulgaria, Siberia, and we can see right now that the United States and the European Union are trying to stop this because they'll lose a lot of money if the gas is not flowing there, and they won't have any control. So Russia is saying, okay, on to plan B. What are we going to do? Well, let's go through Greece, which Russia and China have been making deals with Greece, and then let's go through Turkey. And we'll go through those areas. We'll go through the Black Sea, right into Greece, into Turkey, and up through Italy. And then we can supply Europe with gas. And this is their plan B. They're still going around Ukraine. Now, Russia is preparing further retaliations to the sanctions of the United States, but they're not going to push it out there unless the United States and Europe and Australia, Canada, and all the other countries, if they impose more sanctions on Russia, they want to be prepared. So what are they planning? Well, it looks like they're planning to extend their sanctions to industrial goods, including automobiles. And if they do this, this is going to be a huge, huge hit to the European markets and to the United States. It's going to devastate them. This is the boomerang effect that we've been talking about. And this will increase the economy's speed of collapsing. We can see that it has been increased by the ban on food, and this would just put it into overdrive, and we'll have to see how the United States and the EU, what their response is going to be to this food ban. Are they ready to implement more sanctions and really demolish the economies? We'll have to see how that plays out. Now, the OSCE, they're out there again, and they're saying, listen, we're at 2 Russian border checkpoints right now, and we have not seen ammunition, We have not seen any people dressed in military style crossing the borders, and we have not seen any type of military vehicles or any type of armament crossing the borders. And right now, Moscow says, you know what? We want you in place indefinitely, and I want you to keep an eye on what's been going on here. You can monitor the situation to show that we are not bringing any type of forces into this area. And every time they come out with a report, it just shows that the puppet government in Ukraine is completely lying, NATO is lying, and the United States is lying. Now it looks like Russia and China, they're going to have a huge military drill of about 7,000 troops on 4 Central Asia countries, which have gathered in an Inner Mongolia for the biggest joint drills to fight terrorists. The drills are purportedly to prepare troops to protect the so-called Silk Road economic and transport belt that will run through Central Asia from China to Europe from terrorist attacks. And they're bringing in a lot of armament. The Chinese are bringing in about 23 Chinese aircraft, which will participate in a peace mission, along with tanks, drones, air defense missiles from countries in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the SCO groups: China, Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. Wow, tough words to say. So it looks like they are preparing and having a drill in this area. And of course, who are the terrorist forces? Most likely the European, the United States, Western nations that will try to stop this. Now, the Red Cross is heading out to the Lugansk area. The Red Cross is on its way to the eastern Ukrainian city of Lugansk to organize the delivery of Russian humanitarian. On August 17th, the first of 16 of 280 trucks carrying Russian humanitarian aid arrived at the customs checkpoint in Ukraine. And we can see right now that pretty much it was just humanitarian aid on these trucks. There were no military assets, there were no soldiers, there was absolutely nothing. So all that propaganda of these trucks having troops and military assets and there were no humanitarian aid, all completely false. The convoy of Russia being sneaking into Ukraine, and Ukraine blew them up. Again, more propaganda. First of all, if Russia was going to bring in a convoy, they would have some type of strike to take out all their artillery forces first so the convoy wouldn't get hit. So you can see this was complete propaganda, and they're continually pushing this. Now, Yatsenyuk is out there, and he is saying that, you know, we're going to need like $8 billion to rebuild the infrastructure in the East once we take it over. Because what he's saying is that the independent supporters are purposely destroying the area. No, the shelling of Ukraine into that area is destroying the infrastructure. So everyone reach deep into your pockets, because the United States is going to have to send over billions of dollars to this area. Of course, we have to remember the United States central bankers, Europe, created this entire mess with their coup d'etat in Ukraine, where they overthrew an elected government and put in a puppet regime. And they thought this was going to be so easy until Crimea and the southeastern section voted themselves away in a peaceful referendum. And of course, they started an anti-terrorism campaign against the southeastern section and have not stopped since. Now, it looks like in Yemen, as we know, there is a lot more protests going on. The tribes are rising up. But it seems like the Yemeni government paid the families of those killed or injured in U.S. drone strikes last year more than $1 million, according to documents. Now, of course, where did the Yemeni government get the money? Of course, it's from the United States. So again, they're destroying and hitting everyday people, and now we're paying for their loss. This is absolutely ridiculous. These are not terrorists. These are people in the country trying to take back their country. And you have to remember, all those people in Libya, Lebanon, Yemen, Iraq, who they called Al-Qaeda, are the tribes of the country trying to take back their country and get rid of the puppet regime. Of course, as we go further, down into September, October, Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State are going to merge, and then everything is going to be called the Islamic State. And this is the United States central bankers' mission, because they need a new terrorist group. Al-Qaeda no one is really shocked by Al-Qaeda anymore, so they needed something much more horrific, much more terrible, much more gruesome, much more scary. So that's why they created the Islamic State, and they use it for other reasons also. Now, it looks like Ukraine and Lebanon are demanding more U.S. weapons. They need more. Lebanon is getting a shipment of weapons, military assets into their area because the tribes there are rising up and the government's having trouble. Again, Libya, that country has been almost taken over by the tribes. Yemen is in the process right now, and we can see this is why the Islamic State has been put into place into Iraq. This is to cause chaos all throughout the Middle East and eventually maneuver into Syria. Now, we can see on the White House site there's a petition, and I cannot believe that the American people put up a petition that said that they want Prime Minister al-Maliki tried as a war criminal. And right now they have like 94,000 people who signed the petition, and it seems like this is all propaganda. It just seems a little ridiculous that the American people are going to be so concerned that they put up a petition and they almost have the 100,000 signatures they need. This seems like pure propaganda to convince everyone that, yes, see, the Obama administration did the right thing. They took out al-Maliki. They're bringing in the new prime minister that's going to sign that bilateral agreement which will allow troops into Iraq. You can see how this is all working out here. Now, of course, Obama was out there saying that they had a bomb near the dam in Iraq, and what they're saying right now is the dam is completely booby-trapped. And, of course, there were also reports saying that the Islamic State, no one really captured the dam. This is all for show. They have the whole entire dam wired, and, of course, they're out there saying that, they captured it. Look what we did. We turned it back to the Iraqi government, and but we have to be very careful about this because the dam, which holds back about 11 billion cubic meters of water and produces about 1,000 megawatts of electricity, has the potential to be used as a weapon of mass destruction. If the dam is intentionally damaged or even just not properly maintained, it could unleash a 60-foot high wall of water and would submerge Mosul, Iraq's second city, drowning hundreds of thousands of people and even flooding parts of Baghdad. So you can see what they're doing here. They're using this as a way of getting into Iraq completely. And they might blow it up. And I'm talking about the United States government, to say, look, the Islamic State, which is the tribes of Iraq, blew up the dam, and that is weapons of mass destruction, and they hurt American interests. Terror, terror, terror everywhere. Troops need to go in there. And, of course, this is how the United States works. It says, you have terrorists, we will help. And this is exactly what's going on here. Now, it looks like the FAA now has barred all American airlines from flying over Syria, saying the ongoing conflict poses a serious potential threat. And they updated the assessment risk because now they say the extremists have anti-tank weapons, anti-aircraft weapons, and of course they do because the United States gave it to them and trained them in Jordan on the secret bases. So we can see right now that this is all BS. This is all propaganda. Why? Why is this propaganda? Because they want to get into Syria. And we can see we are heading down this path. We are getting ready to have some type of an event to allow the United States to fly into Syria and bomb Syria. Now, this is going to be a big problem right now because Russia is very friendly with Assad. I mean, Putin and Assad, very friendly. They have many, many contracts, and they work together. They supply Assad with many weapons, and if this does occur, this will kick off World War III. And they've already said no airliner flying over Syria, so we can see they are pretty much laying down the foundation for what is coming. And we have to remember, this is their goal. They are losing everything in the Middle East. The tribes are rising up. Drone strikes are not working. Look at the payout right now. And they realize they have lost control. And the only way to get control is to get troops in there, to get troops into each one of these countries, and the only way to do this is to follow the terrorists into each one of these countries and to say we're protecting American interests and we're protecting democracy and freedom for the people and all this other stuff that they usually use. And we can see this is complete propaganda, and eventually they will be moving into Syria because that is the main goal still. Now it looks like hackers broke into about 4.5 million patient records on a multi-state hospital network. And of course, who are they blaming this on? That's right, China. They're saying a hacker group in China was able to steal Social Security numbers, names, physical addresses, telephone numbers, and these are advanced persistent threat hacking group in China that has breached other major U.S. companies across several industries. The intruders uses high-end sophisticated malware to conduct corporate espionage. Now, like I said before, these advanced actors, they are not going to attack from their country. They would make it look like it was coming from someplace completely different. The United States does it all the time. So there is absolutely no way they would know where this is coming from. And I'll tell you right now, it is not from China. And if you notice, in the past couple of months, they have really been building up, not just that Russia and China have been hacking, but there's been a lot of breaches in retail, in medical records, because you have to remember, they also are trying to pass the bill CISA or CISPA, and they want this passed. And as they keep building this propaganda up, showing that, yes, companies need to share your private information, we need to take control of the web, they're going to continually do this because this is coming up to a vote, and they want to build the propaganda as much as they possibly can. Now, we understand that government came in and they set the patients free in the Liberia hospital right now, and it looks like about 17 individuals who fled the quarantine center in that area have been transferred to another clinic. They've been captured. But what's very interesting now is that Liberia's armed forces have been given orders to shoot people on site who are attempting to illegally cross the border for Ebola-stricken Sierra Leone. So if someone is trying to come through the border illegally, you will be shot on site. Now, it's a little different in the United States. If you come across the border of the United States, we give you food, we give you clothing, we give you work permits, we transfer you to a different state to start your life, we give you free medical insurance, and we don't really check you for anything, and you might have diseases, that's fine, you can come on in, and we keep the borders wide open. Now, this is absolutely ridiculous. We understand that this is some type of false flag event. And what's very interesting about Ebola, that it's happening in the area where China has been pumping in billions of dollars into the infrastructure there, and the United States really wants to get into this area where Nigeria is, Liberia, Chad, Mali, Sudan, and we see this is all breaking out in the same exact location, which is very coincidental. And we can see that this is also being spread and hyped up for companies inside the United States that have this vaccine, which kind of works, doesn't work, which most likely doesn't work, but they're really pushing the agenda here because someone must have a vested interest in this company. It was a very tiny, small company, and they're keeping the fear level raised, and they're continually pushing this propaganda out there. And I'm not saying don't take this seriously, but it seems right now that they're just continually pushing their agenda in the Africa region right now. Now, the Islamic State is out there once again, and they are saying that they're going to drown the American targets in blood if the United States continues to launch airstrikes against the group. Specifically, the militants said that it would launch attacks against Americans in any place if their members are killed by airstrikes. Now, you have to remember, the United States government sent out explosives to pretty much all the different embassies around the world. Now, those are probably being set in the embassies, getting ready for this false flag event. We also have to understand that there are sleeper cells inside the United States. Now, these aren't really terrorists. These are an inside job. They have their mission, it's set, and once they get the green light, we will see the event occur. We understand that they've already placed the digital bomb in the financial institutions. They're telling us it is Russia. They've already placed malware in the power infrastructure. They're also telling us that's Russia. They're also telling us that China has been cyber attacking and committing cyber espionage against many different companies. So they're building that propaganda up, and they really are building up the propaganda of the Islamic State, because now they're bringing in that we don't know what type of actor, what type of cyber attack actor they are. They could be very advanced. We see they're bringing in billions of dollars from all their oil sales, and they might be very advanced in committing cyber attacks in the United States right now. Now, there is U.S. intel on ISIL's confident terror plans for the West, and what they're saying is that they have a lot of momentum right now, and the U.S. intelligence community has determined that the Islamic State of Iraq is building infrastructure in the West right now. They're saying the Islamic State was establishing sleeper cells in Europe, in the European Union, and in the United States, getting ready to attack sometime soon. So we can see already they're building this out. They're saying there's sleeper cells in Britain, France, Netherlands, Spain, and in the United States. So we can see how they're building this propaganda up, how they're pushing the agenda, because we realize the economy is doomed. Europe is in a huge depression right now. It is spreading. The debt levels cannot be maintained. More and more people becoming unemployed. Here, the economy and the manipulated numbers are completely separate and far apart, and they need to really do something to cover up this collapse. We can see inside the United States that the police are already militarized. They're in compliance with DHS. The corporate media is pushing out the propaganda that the anti-government people have to be put down with heavy police force. We can see them conditioning everyone in the country. In Ferguson, there's agent provocateurs inside of Ferguson right now, and most likely, if we see this spread to other cities with other agent provocateurs, we will know they have the green light to spread this, to declare martial law in the United States. Otherwise, this is conditioning right now for the American public to take sides, white, black, which is absolutely not what the issue is right now. The issue is the police using force on everyday people if they step out of line. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.